As president, I have a responsibility to act with urgency and resolve when our nation faces clear and present dangers. And that's what climate change is about.
Experts are once again pointing to climate change.
After years of you and your colleagues warning about climate change,
causing many to point the finger squarely at climate change.
Heat waves are becoming more frequent and more intense as global warming continues.
We already are experiencing climate change. This is not our grandchildren. This is today, this is right now.
Nowhere is completely safe from climate change.
Extreme heat and drought, places like the United Arab Emirates. And this week, flooding rain swamped the roads in the capital city of Abu Dhabi. Scientists working for the government created rainstorms by zapping clouds with electricity from drones, believe it or not. This can cause water droplets in the clouds to clump together and fall as a raindrop. Their hope is to help boost the desert nation's annual rainfall and help cool the extreme temperatures, which recently reached 125 degrees. So the question is the technology now becoming so good that we're able to do this? Is it ethical?
So I started doing research and found out about HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. And I realized that they really did know how to make earthquakes. And they do it by shooting a 1 billion watt microwave into the ionosphere, which is a part of the atmosphere that has a lot of energy in it. That pushes the ionosphere up into outer space and then it rebounds. And the way it rebounds can cause earthquakes. Just like an opera singer can break a glass by singing at a certain level, or by dragging your fingernails on a blackboard, you feel a weird sensation. If they adjust the vibration for the rock underneath their target site, they can do that. The same machine can also heat up subterranean water to cause earthquakes. And remember, a 1 billion watt microwave. What does microwave do to water? It heats it up. Now imagine if you put 1 billion watts into a tropical storm. You could make it much bigger, and you could change the direction it flows in. You know how there's high pressure zones and low pressure zones. Well, high is hot and low is cold. And the hot flows into the cold. And vice versa when there's more of the cold. So they can heat up an area and cause it to flow into a next door area. In other words, these people are capable of creating the cyclone that hit Myanmar, the tsunami that hit Indonesia, and the earthquake that hit China. Now, after the earthquakes hit Niigata, a member of the Inagawa crime family, which is based around the U.S. Yokosuka Air Base, and members of the Inagawa family have told me that their big boss is George Bush Sr. In other words, they work for Skull and Bones. And they invited me to a so-called UFO gathering where they showed me the video of this blob. They told me it was a UFO, but it was obviously, to me anyway, a plasma weapon, or a ball of heat created by something like a 1 billion watt microwave. And I predicted in my blog that there would be videos of lights found above China before the earthquake. And those videos then appeared on the internet after I predicted they would.
But actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a kind of ugly tech fix.
You can spray something into the atmosphere to change.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
How do you do this?
You start with a fleet of modified business jets and say 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year. And each year you have to put a little more. And this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in emissions.
No, we'll get to it eventually. But in the meantime, we're shrouding the earth in sulfuric acid.
So people are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid.
We put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now as pollution, and it kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, but it'll be better if we put more in.
We're talking about 1% of that.
1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down, but it's a tiny addition to what we're already doing.
Is there any possible way this could come back to bite us in the end?
It actually turns out to be an old idea. This was known since President Johnson.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them. Maybe all those planes with the contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now, and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
Seems extremely unlikely.
That the United States is not telling something to its citizens? That seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper.
With the U.S. military's secretive research and plans to control the planet's natural weather. This has not been given very much press, and we have to remember that we have a corporate-owned press where 85% of radio, television, and print media is owned by 5 corporations. So they're not going to talk about things that are of really serious consequence, and that's somewhat of the blessing, a mixed blessing of the internet, but there's certainly plenty of information on weather modification. The Air Force is on record as saying, quote, they want to control the weather by 2025, and we are not talking about just seeding the clouds for rain. Weather modification means, quote, any activity performed with the intention of producing artificial changes in the composition, behavior, or dynamics of the atmosphere, unquote. And as of April this year, there are more than 150 different weather modification programs around the world. Since about 2000, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have been spraying the entire United States sky with a toxic brew of chemicals and other biologic agents. The military and some commercial planes are spraying us with what are called chemtrails. I want you to look at the, and oftentimes before there's a weather front, there are heavy assaults from these planes just before a weather front is changed and comes in. Military and some commercial jets have been fitted with huge barrels of at least 49 different kinds of documented chemical poisons. Among other documented ingredients in this toxic man-made clouds are pathogenic molds, fungi, weaponized viruses, and made in some places like the secret site at Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is supposed to be a cancer site. But there are a number of scholars and professors tracking this that have big questions about this. Barium and nanoaluminum particles. What do these do to the human body?
Today is officially the hottest day ever recorded in this country, with a temperature of 102.3 noted outside of the city of London. And the temperatures are expected to go even higher, north of 105 today. And the heat is already bringing this country to a standstill. The infrastructure simply isn't built to survive these kinds of extreme temperatures.
Millions of people across the country have been affected by dangerous, record-breaking heat. Portland hit an all-time high of 116 degrees on Monday, living up to the National Weather Service's prediction of a historic, dangerous, prolonged, and unprecedented heat wave.
Evacuation efforts still underway after historic flooding ripped apart roads and destroyed bridges in the Yellowstone region. The park stretches across parts of Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Here you can see a home collapsing into a raging river, floodwaters eating away at the riverbank and sparking catastrophic mudslides. No official word yet on the number of homes ruined.
Water is the most powerful natural force on Earth, and over the weekend, an unending deluge of it tore through communities in Middle Tennessee.
There's houses moved off their foundation, cars and trees. This is almost to biblical proportions here.
This is a case, as we talked yesterday, overwhelmed infrastructure, people experiencing floods that have never seen water like this before.
Burning hotter, faster, and more explosive than ever before, tonight wildfires in the West are threatening homes and lives. Firefighters say what's unfolding here is more than one disaster feeding off another. Historic drought is the perfect fuel for these epic conditions. But it's climate change creating infernos larger than ever.
Now, as we reported, California is struggling with two enormous fires simultaneously. They're being driven by high winds, high temperatures, and a pervasive drought. But as William Brangham reports, you can find these extreme conditions throughout the American West and in much of Northern and Western Europe, causing many to point the finger squarely at climate change.
Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the U.S., is drying up by the day. So is Lake Powell, the second largest U.S. reservoir, and countless other sources of water around the world the same. Other lakes and waterways are being hit with biblical level flooding. Both conditions are hallmarks of climate intervention operations. Question: would covert global climate engineering operations known as geoengineering, solar radiation management, and cloud albedo enhancement cause unprecedented drought conditions like those now being endured in the U.S. West, in Las Vegas, and Lake Mead watersheds? All available climate science data makes clear the answer is yes. Geoengineering causes drought. Next question: how did the builders of the Lake Mead dead pool drain know 20 years in advance that the western U.S. megadrought was coming? I'll examine that question more closely in a moment. Lake Mead's third intake set the world record for the deepest subaqueous tunnel while working against up to 15 atmospheres of pressure due to the extreme depth of the tunnel. The Deep Strata Lake Mead Drain Project posed extreme dangers while utilizing the latest underwater blasting technologies to help complete the 15,200-foot-long megatunnel designed to drain every last drop from Lake Mead. The most modern tunnel boring technology was incorporated into the hybrid tunnel boring machine that was specifically manufactured for this project of total desperation. The tunnel borer operated under conditions never before achieved by this type of technology. 90% of Las Vegas's water comes from Lake Mead. Keep that in mind. The ultimate objective of this mega project that had a reported final cost of $1.5 billion is to keep the Las Vegas party going till the last possible moment, to avoid panicking populations all over the world when a city of over 2 million overall residents and visitors virtually implodes. Question: where did the massive amount of funding actually come from? Who gave Las Vegas the right to the last lifeblood of a rapidly drying and dying Lake Mead? What happens to all the downstream dependence of Lake Mead water when it no longer flows? That blank isn't hard to fill in, and that day draws very, very near. Many other cities will follow in the path of Las Vegas due to countless forms of environmental implosion, with climate intervention operations further fueling all of it. Once the dominoes begin to fall, the equation will accelerate exponentially. And keep this in mind: once the majority of global populations realize that the party is over, that none of it was even remotely sustainable, that the reckoning is here, the law of the jungle will prevail at blinding speed. Those in power are acutely aware of what will unfold when the water stops flowing and simultaneously food production collapses. What's the single greatest drought-causing factor in this equation? Covert climate engineering operations. They have systematically derailed global precipitation patterns. In 2011, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration admitted that atmospheric particle pollution had almost doubled in the decade before 2011, which, for the record, takes the timeline back to just before Lake Mead's first frightening water level drop in 2002. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration claims excessive atmospheric aerosols offset a percentage of global warming, which is the stated goal of solar radiation management operations. Also, for the record, excessive atmospheric aerosol particle pollution causes drought, period. Though precipitation in the U.S. West has fluctuated to a degree since that time, the overall trend has been consistent: drier and hotter. The cutting off of precipitation to the western U.S. isn't an act of nature. It's the direct result of illegal and unimaginably destructive geoengineering programs. This isn't a denial of the unfolding planetary meltdown due to countless forms of destructive human activities, which climate engineering is making far worse, overall, not better. But, again, the drought-causing impacts of climate intervention operations are well documented and not scientifically disputed. The atmosphere can hold 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming. Unfiltered frontline data indicates that we are likely past 3.5 degrees C of warming now. Prior to the year 2000, climate precipitation modeling forecasted the greatest overall increase in precipitation for the United States in the western U.S., again, due to the rapid warming of the region and its geographic location east of the Pacific Ocean. What happened? What went wrong? What happened to the rain? Short answer: climate intervention operations. We can speculate about the agendas and objectives in play, but the fact that climate engineering programs are cutting off precipitation from the U.S. West is beyond dispute. Satellite imagery proves beyond any reasonable doubt that climate engineering is radically diminishing and dispersing rain from the western U.S. and many other parts of the world, while other regions are deluged with the stolen and diverted precipitation. The fight to expose and halt climate engineering is nothing short of a fight against weather warfare.